Dan Husted. And Dan is the Vice President of Business Development with Lakes Region Co-op. He graduated from Chadron University, Chadron State University.
Yeah.
And he noticed.
Nobody's ever heard of it.
I've heard of it. But it's also the alma mater of our governor, so.
Yeah.
I noted that. One of the nice parts of my job is the people I meet. And Dan is kind of at one of the top of the list in that, because he's been very accommodating to our program. We've taken tours through Lakes Region Co-op, and anytime I call, he says, sure, come on up. He's been a great host, and he's taught interns from our program through those tours, and our German colleagues, he's hosted them. Been a great person to work with, and I really appreciate that he's willing to take his time to come here to Morris to present to you today. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Mike. Did you do that okay? Okay. I think I'm still on, but okay. Yeah, my name is Dan Husted. I'm the Vice President of Business Development, Lake Region Cooperative, and we have the service territory just north of here. In the bulk of our territory is in Otter Tail County. And that has a relationship to why we do some of the things we do. We tend to pioneer a number of different types of energy services offerings. I like to think it's due to the membership of our co-op. You're familiar with Otter Tail County. There are 1,000 lakes. Actually, it's more like 1,050, and that's just those with names. And so we have members that come from all 50 states, including DC, and a lot of our membership, because of lake home ownership, come from metropolitan areas, the Twin Cities, Fargo being the two primary areas where they come from. So they bring a lot of expectations and to the co-op from home. Expectations of different types of services. So we have done that. We built, excuse me, we weren't the first community solar, but we built the second. And we built it using our own crews, engineers, electricians, all on staff. We installed geothermal systems, loop systems. Now we are in the business of installing standby generators, and we use those for demand response control too. But after we did Go West, after we did our community solar, we wanted to keep our hands in the business, and we do approach this as a business. That we serve our members. It's our territory. We're there to serve energy and energy-based services, so we wanted to keep our staff in it and in the business, and really kind of defending our turf in a way. But with all of our energy service offerings, what we try to do is find a niche that's served, underserved, or not served. And it's got the service has to make sense for both the co-op and the customer. And so we wanted to design Go West, which is primarily a residential size to load ground mount system. We wanted to, it has to make sense for them and for us. So what's unique about Go West, of course, is it's faced 240 degrees southwest, because that optimizes production late in the afternoon. Traditional solar, solar noon is what, about 2, 3 in the afternoon. As a utility, we don't need that energy then. It doesn't make sense for us to be buying net metered energy at twice the cost of our wholesale supplier in the middle of the afternoon. We need it at peak time. So that's why we aimed it southwest. We share the value of that demand reduction with the member and in the form of a bill credit. I mentioned the systems are sized to load. It looks just exactly, it's wired exactly like a standard net metered interconnection. We follow the same rules, make the same applications, charge for the same fees that net metered installations do, except that because this is an exclusive service offered by Lake Region Electric, any exports that the member makes back out onto our distribution system are reimbursed at our avoided costs. So the unique thing about Go West, of course, is the demand reduction, how we determined what the bill credit was going to be. And I was always intrigued by papers around the duck curve, in reading about different purely west-facing systems and the potential for demand reduction there, benefit to the utility. So we dug into some of the data. And that data, includes when are the peak periods during the summer for our power suppliers, Great River Energy. Well, it turns out 2/3 of them are at 6 p.m., the other third at 7. Got to look at weather data. I talked to a lot of people early on and said, well, this can't work. According to PV watts, you're only going to get this much. Well, we looked at the weather data, and there's something unique about peak days. They're not average. A peak day, by definition, is not an average day. So we found out it's over 90% sunny and hot. And so aligning the panel to the southwest provides a very high level of actual nameplate power back to the system. And the goal is actually, in a lot of these, is to almost make the home disappear during peak time. So that was kind of the goal. Yeah, just looking at some of the weather, just 11% cloud cover in Fergus Falls over the last, since 2010 during peak hours. Now that doesn't mean that clouds don't occur. I remember one day I was out on the golf course and knew it was a peak demand day. We were controlling load and one little thunderstorm in an otherwise perfectly sunny day rolled through right during the peak hour. And that happens. So that's the reason we share the demand reduction. We do have to cover some of that risk for potential that's going to happen. I mentioned capacity factor. So at 6 p.m. we can get almost 75% load factor out of a Go West panel. And there are days where we get into the mid-80s in terms of load factor. Obviously, the bill credit is based on, we avoid power supply capacity and transmission charges. So that's a direct reduction. We share that value. Our rate is based on that value, which is why it is exclusive through us, that we're the only ones that can determine what that value is, and we pass that directly through to the member. Right now, we used to sell 6 kW systems. We just passed our grid access charge in June, so we no longer sell 6 kW systems. It's just 3 and 1.5, unless somebody's willing to obviously pay the grid access charge, and it's very much like Runestone's. I think for a small system it caps out at $18. something around $1.50 a KW over 3.5. In terms of incentive, we are a traditional utility. We do sell kilowatt hours of our own, so we offer a free marathon water heater. And a marathon water heater coincides with off-peak sales that more and more are made up of wind energy. 50% of Great River Energy's supply by 2030 is going to be wind. I think it's close to 30% now, so we are incenting water heaters as part of our the sale of the Go West system. We had fun with advertising. I haven't tested these links to know whether they work, so but early on we did some advertising and radio ads and if you recognize the what's for dinner commercials from a few years ago, they're played on that. I think I'll just bypass that. I don't want to play commercials. That's the demo unit that's sitting out in front of our house. We are building 2 up now, so we changed some of our racking and supply for our panels and inverters. So that has changed a little bit. Maybe in terms of actual wiring interconnection, we install the panels, everything up to the inverter. And we can use the member's electrician to provide run wire from the interconnection point to the disconnect at the array. So I went through that kind of quickly, but I obviously have time for questions. So any questions about what we're doing? Yes, sir.
Can you explain a little bit about the capacity factor, what that means? You said 75% at 6 p.m. Is that 75% of the inverter's AC output is producing
Right.
at
So
that
if
point?
you had 10 kW capacity, we're producing 7.5. And then that is used to calculate the bill credit based on the avoided costs, avoided demand and transmission costs. We share those at about a 60-40 ratio. The member gets 60% of the savings, the co-op keeps 40, because we are taking the risk for those occasional clouds and fronts. The weather can be different in Otter Tail County and the metropolitan area, where really the GRE demand is created is closer to the metro area. So we can have a front coming through and have completely different weather than them, so. Yes?
And you're just looking at that peak hour, right? And I think what we see when we're looking at solar installations for our members is they're looking at the capacity factor for the 24-hour period.
Mhm.
So when we have
Different
members that are looking
concept.
at solar and they're hearing 15, 16%, it's encompassing that whole 24 hours. He's talking about the peak for wholesale power, right?
Yeah, some of the discussions I had way early on was about, well, this can't work because I looked at PV watts and the average day says this, and you know your production isn't going to be that way. And I said, we're only concerned about 1 hour of one particular day each summer month. So we are looking at total production at that 1 hour.
So, Dan, could you explain how Great River Energy charges for that 1 hour, that peak demand? The bill that you receive from Great River Energy is largely dependent on the highest load that you have on the system at any given point in time. Correct? Or could you explain this?
It's a coincidental demand. So when GRE peaks, and they know, they do very, very precise forecasting of loads and weather. And on a peak control day, you know, they let us all know that control your water heaters, control air conditioners, irrigation. This is a peak day. This performs very much like a load like that has a switch attached to it. And so we know that GRE is going to peak that day. They tell us the hours. There could be a 4 or 6 hour period where they ask us to control. We know the peak is going to occur then. But in looking at our data and actual peaks, we know that in the summertime, peaks occur at either 6 or 7 p.m.
So what is
statistically.
What is the cost difference between 7 p.m. actual cost for you from Gray River Energy at 7 p.m. versus 3 a.m. or off peak?
So that one, without getting into actual rates, kind of reluctant to do that, but
Well, just in broad numbers, what is the percentage difference?
so capacity and transmission, we are charged based on KW. It's not a kilowatt hour charge, it's not an energy charge. So I'll just throw a number out of $25 per KW. Load, horsepower, whatever. And if that load is on peak, that's what we're billed for. And the co-op pays that month. That 1 hour sets that capacity and transmission billing. So we know that 75%, at 6 p.m., 75% of the nameplate on the inverter for that Go West system is going to be operating. We know that 75% of that 6 kW system is going to be operating. That's equivalent of, shutting off, an air conditioner and a water heater.
Is that based on 15-minute metering or how?
That's based on just the hourly peak that our wholesale bill is based on. So we know it's hour ending 6, hour ending 7. Yes?
What's your demand charge to a customer per kilowatt then? We only saw $10, you mentioned 25 that you're getting charged, but.
Customers don't see that.
Customers don't.
And I guess that gets back into the net metering thing, is that a lot of the cost of service or power isn't necessarily, residential customers aren't bill demand. It's embedded into their kilowatt hour charge. So is some of the costs of the distribution system is embedded in the kilowatt hour charge. So they don't see it directly.
But for a business then with that.
Businesses see a portion of it, certainly do. They will pay a demand charge. It won't necessarily be the same one that we pay for, because some of those costs could be in the kilowatt hour charge as well too.
So the point is that energy, actual cost for energy varies throughout the day. And Gray River Energy that supplies Lakes Region, they pay MISO, Midwest Independent System Operators, probably minute by minute, at least hourly, hour by hour for that power. And at some points during the day, it could be 10 times above average, and other low peak times it could be negative priced actually. They're get paid to take. And Ryan, I'd like to stay on time, so.
Just a 10 second view. I think the unique thing I really appreciate what Lake Region has done over the years too, a lot of it is trying to translate the costs that we have and try to figure out how to serve our members to provide opportunities for them to save on their power bill. So I mean, it's always just trying to figure out how to balance and translate that to something that they can digest and they can use and turn into savings and value for them. It's a broker relationship trying to figure out how to bring values through that supply chain.
Very good.
Thank you. I think you nailed our philosophy right there. That's what we try to do.
So thank you very much.